It sounds horrible. I've got one person going, this sounds horrible, and then my dear friend Christy going, no, it's fine.
You're good.
But the guy behind us going, motherfucker, sounds like...
I'll start by introducing this is Michael DeVar, who has had and continues to have quite a diverse career. I became aware of Michael back when I was a kid, about 72, 73. He was lead singer of a band called Silverhead.
A thing called Silverhead, that's perfect.
Two great albums, both of which I bought in the cutout bin at my local record store. And fascinated by one called 16 and Savaged that had a very provocative picture of a young girl on the cover of that album, and a song called 16 and Savage.
Now I'm 75 and savage.
It had a pretty provocative cover of that too. So I was a young teen and very much enamored of this kind of glam garage band from England that I knew nothing about. I'd read about Cream magazine and bought them, played them in my bedroom, and they were part of my, I don't know, my early glam growing up. So I'm pleased to meet you just on that level.
Yeah.
But you've done a lot of other things too.
Yeah.
However, but I will start with something I just realized about Silverhead. You put out 2 LPs in your lifetime, you know, the band existed, and now there's a 6 CD Silverhead set, correct?
Yeah.
Explain that.
Well, I mean, you know, some records last forever. It's an interesting vibe because I think we're all sort of ahead of the vibe, you know. We were sort of transgender teenage drug addicts, which is the title of my book, of course. But, you know, I think we were just a little bit ahead of it all, because it was pre-Bowie and pre-T-Rex, you know, my life. And I was only 18, 19, I'd just done To Sell With Love, and you know, and that really helped me to go to clubs in London, because once that movie came out, it was such a big movie that I could get in anywhere, you know, and I'd get into these places. So I had a very early tutelage by the great blues bands, you know, of that era, Stones, Yardbirds, when they were in small clubs. And my band Silverhead was formed within weeks. I did this nude musical in London, and which was very exciting. We got actually fined if we got an erection, but that's something else. I want much bigger applause and laughter. That's good. Thank you very much. Thank you. And Andrew Lloyd Webber came to see this thing, and I sang, and he said, "You should be in a band. You should." And what I did the demos for Judas in Jesus Christ Superstar. And he said, you know, and I'm skinny, I weighed 90 pounds at the time, you know, and most of it was mascara. And I got the gig. And he said, oh, you know, you should have a record deal. And I got a record deal, and within a few weeks we had this band and we made this record, you know, so it was all very quick. And I didn't profess to be a singer or anything. I love blues music, but it just seemed to be the right thing to do. You know, I always call it rock and roll, R-O-L-E. It was a performance. It wasn't really, I wasn't a musician. I don't think I've ever been a musician. I think I've portrayed all the things I've done. I love music, but I never really, and I've had, you know, big hits that I wrote. But it doesn't, it's so difficult to explain. I don't feel like a musician or an actor. I just thought I was out there having fun, doing whatever it was. You know, if it was a camera or a microphone, I could give a fuck. I just wanted to enjoy myself and express myself somehow as an artist. But I never defined myself as anything other than, you know, I think Murdoch was the closest to my own personality. You know, the killer. Everybody know Murdoch in here?
Yes.
I need bigger than that. Okay, so, you know, I mean, I just had high cheekbones and they cast me. Yeah, but anyway, does that answer your question?
It does. Actually, he brought up To Serve with Love, and I'm not sure what people know about Michael's career, but that was the breakthrough, was you playing, what was your character's name? I forget.
Ava Gardner.
Played it, To Serve with Love.
No, it's Williams. My character was Williams. I had like 3 lines, but I wore sunglasses. Because when I walked in, I thought, oh, what am I going to do? There's like 13 really cute people here, you know. And what am I going to do to stand out? So I'll wear shades. And then I've worn shades ever since. It's been the vibe, you know. So again, it wasn't acting. I was just scheming and dreaming. You know.
You put him on, and the director said, yeah, cool, fine.
No, he said, hey, he immediately went out, and all the wardrobe people came in with 20 pairs of sunglasses. 15 of which I stole and sold. But it was something, you know, because this, for all of you people here, in terms of all of this artistry, it's all bullshit. You know, you just be express yourself, and that's all that matters is communication. If you can do it with somebody else's lines, great, you know. But I had a fantastic time doing it. It was a massive hit, and it provided me with the vibe to be able to do what I wanted to do next, which was play rock and roll music.
You were in Detective after that.
Well, yeah, it was, you know, what happened though, Silverhead was, you know, big in Japan. Have you heard that before? You know, there's so many bands that are big in Japan, but they loved us because I had whiteface and kabuki. I was very into kabuki mime, Japanese, you know, mime and gestures and stuff. But I was also a drug addict and an alcoholic. So here I am in Tokyo, watching these brilliant, you know, how they move so beautifully, and it was astounding to see kabuki, because the Japanese audience, when somebody did a gesture that was beautiful, there'd be people in the audience that were absolutely knew every nuance. For 1,000 years they've been doing the same things. So when they did an action, like mime, you'd hear, in the background. And what that meant was that artist, that actor, there were no actresses, it was all men in drag. It was very interesting. And that would be a signal that they've done that movement correctly, which fascinated me. I mean, that was applause by one person, you know, for one gesture. And I thought, wow, that's fantastic. So then when I played that night, and you know, we played to like 40,000 people, and I came out and I did some kind of kabuki thing and fell off the fucking stage and broke my arm. I was in the orchestra pit. Can you imagine that? You know, I mean, it was so poetic up to the fact that I broke my arm, you know. And hence, if you've seen any pictures of that band in those early days, I've got this huge cast. I mean, called Silverhead, and I sprayed it with, you know, silver. Strangely enough. So it's been a funky trip, you know. And then I met Miss Pamela in LA. And I've been married to this beautiful woman who I've been with, you know, we were only kids, we got married very young, and then 3 weeks later, you know, we did 10 days in Japan. I came to LA, we played the whiskey, and there was Miss Pamela. Is everybody familiar with who Miss Pamela is? I'm with the band and all of that, incredible. It's been made into a movie by Dakota Johnson, who's producing the movie of my ex-wife's book. And, you know, and I fell in love with her and moved to LA, and then Detective happened. Because I knew Zeppelin, because Jimmy was a real big fan of Silverhead, and in fact, one story about that is in Birmingham, Bonzo, the drummer, had a farm there, and we played this club, Silverhead played this club, and there were about 20 people in the club, and 4 of them were Led Zeppelin. No. And so Bonzo invited the band back to his farm, where we stayed for 3 days, exercising and painting. And writing letters and doing massive amounts of coke. It was crazy. It was just fantastic, you know. And I fell in love with all of them. And so when I came to LA and I, fell in love with Miss Pamela, who wouldn't, and Zeppelin came to LA, and I was jamming with a few people, and that's how Detective happened. The second band I was in, Michael Monarch, John Hyde, Bobby Pickett, great. And we did a couple of records, but the problem with that was, when we started, we got, $1 million for that, divided between the bands. So what happened was, Jimmy was going to produce it, and he shall we say, how can I put this? He wasn't really in the mood to do anything but what he had to do at that time, and you know what I'm talking about. So I waited a year, we waited a year. So you can't give $250,000 to a fucking teenager, and expect us to be waiting politely to make an album. And I got strung out. I got strung out on heroin. And by the time he got back, we were a mess, the whole band. Oh, a bear just walked into the and I was walking out. He doesn't believe me.
It was the heroin.
And so it was pretty funky, And so making those records was tough because I wasn't all there. But they still sound good,
I want to, two questions. First one is kind of a funny one, I hope. But many people, I think, got to know Pamela, your wife, and then ex-wife, perhaps before they got to know you. So she has a level of fame that's somewhere there. Do you think she may be more famous than you? And if so, does that matter?
Nobody's more famous than me.
There you go.
Except Prince Harry. I slept with his wife. I did the show Suits. I'm not kidding. That's the title of my autobiography. Is he kidding? A life in 3 chords.
But this is a much more, if you will, benevolent question, I think, because I've been following Michael on Facebook, as many of you have, I hope, for a while, and his presence there, he is very, very kind and compassionate and very much power of positive thinking, I think. I'm not sure if I've ever heard, you're very funny tonight, I appreciate it, but I don't think I've ever heard a negative word from you on Facebook. You're very encouraging of what you're doing and what other people are doing.
I'm not interested in what other people are doing. That's the thing, What happens to us is we see something and we think, well, I'll be that. I'll be cynical. There's nothing worse in this world than cynicism. And I despise it. And that's why I'm comforted by the notion, I was a junkie and then I got sober 42 years ago. And I haven't had a drug or a drink since, And I believe that if we don't send out positive vibes, we shouldn't be on the planet. We are in such a fucked up place right now, especially in the United States. It's a disaster what's going on out there, and I always say, look, love yourself enough to be loved. Love yourself enough to be loved. Be kind, be cool, and be courageous. That's heroic. That's what heroism is. From heroin to heroism would be my life. And if we don't behave in that way, we will sink into the Atlantic. And it'll be all fucking over. You can still play hard rock and roll, you can still, play villains, and I can still do all of that. I do all of that. But really what I'm all about, social media to me is not anti-social media. Social media is a tremendous thing. It's a wonderful thing that I've really embraced. And I've had I have 5 million people listen to me every fucking day on the radio. If I don't say something positive on the radio to all those people, what am I alive for? Good morning. So I really, to answer your question, I'm very empathetic to those who need it. The world is overweight. There's too much, people are absorbing things to try and get away from the fact that we've been so divided. In fact, I came up with the phrase vision, not division. Because that's what we are, completely divided. And if you don't love your neighbor, as Jesus said, Jesus rocks. There's no question about that. I mean, Krishnamurti, all the people that really, pervade the whole notion of love and kindness, that's the only way to beat this thing, man. Don't you think?
Yes.
And I hope that makes sense to you.
Well, Michael, talking about division, I really don't know where you stand on this. I mean, do you fall on the left or the right?
Oh, fuck lefts and rights.
Okay.
I'm right here in the fucking middle, I mean, that's the problem. I'm Jewish. I'm Catholic. Why are we divided up into these different chapters? What kind of book are you reading? What chapter are you on? It's an absurdity. It's dividing through religion. So now spirituality, number 1, Catholic. Number 2, Jews. Number 3, Hindus. I mean, it's an absurdity. If we're all, want to live with love in our lives, there is no competition. This is not the top fucking 10. Well, you too is bigger than Jews. It's a hopeless concept. And it's a childish, barbaric, Michael Day barbaric bullshit. And to put yourself in any category is absurd. And that's where the division begins. The left, the right, the Labour, the Democrats, the Conservatives, that dreadful man with that ginger hair. All of this shit. These people that are just taking your money. And they're feeding on the fact that there's 3 or 4 people that rule the world, but that's another story.
It's another story. Talk about your radio show for a bit.
It's great.
What,
Greatest radio program in history.
what do you like to expose on there, and what attitude do you want?
I think when you hear a song, we all have different views of the song. Let's take a song, Stand By Me, Benny. I mean, I know what his children's names. You know what I mean? You've got to know what you're talking about. So it's not just me saying, oh, here comes Ramble On by Zeppelin. I have a story behind that. Only because I've researched it, and I have been around a long time, and I've been, not obsessed, that's not the right word, but I've been very, very determined to understand, how Otis Redding died and how old was he, and what, sitting on the dock of the bed meant to him. So then when I find out what happened, why he sang that song, then I think the audience then will understand why they enjoy it and what it means to them. All great art we've all experienced, but great artists take that feeling and put it into something, and then you would enjoy the music better if you know the story of the fucking song. Wilson Pickett, carried a gun and coke, and all of these stories are so important to me because it gives a construct to those 3 chords. Because that's all there is. It's a beautiful thing to know how these songs were written. How John and Paul got together, what really happened.
Well, I don't know. I just say that I wrote it, but Paul says he wrote it, so I don't know.
And Keith Rose, fucking Mick Jagger, the motherfucking autopilot. All of this stuff is great, and I can impersonate these motherfuckers on the radio, and people love it, because they feel attached to it, And it's beautiful, the songs we play. So, it means the world to me to do this radio program. 3 hours a day, ladies and gentlemen, for 9.5 years I've done some, it's the longest job I've ever had, except for maybe Murdoch,
So to tell you something, when I was a young rock critic and a little bit naive, I was talking to Nick Lowe and Dave Edmonds and Rockpile, and I was asking them about how they got into music and why they got into music. And my idea was, well, because of the art to express, because you had something internal that just had to get out. And they both looked at me like I was an idiot and basically said, it's about girls, needy girls. You have a guitar, people like it. Would that have been the same for you?
Absolutely not. No. Absolutely not. No. I could get laid and be a fucking doctor, a dentist, the sexiest dentist in the world. Open your mouth, darling. I think that the caricature of rock and roll stardom is bullshit. You know, I just won't get laid, man, and do coke. Come and kiss my ass. Get out. What the fuck is that? I love music, I love to act, I love to make love. But I'm not gonna, you know, have groupies. I married the queen of the fucking groupies. It's bullshit, it's bullshit. Nick Lowe, I love Nick. I wrote a song with Nick, and he's great. And Dave Edmonds, but they feel they have to say that. Do you understand what I'm saying? They feel that that's rock and roll, that's the language of rock. It's not. They're human beings like you and I, like you two here at the Monkeys. Right? You two, you love each other, right? Right? Is he a bass player? Are you a bass player? Well, fuck this. That's your proof. I want a round of applause for these two over here. See, the whole thing is that, you know, it's sexualized because you think you have to be sexualized. And rock and roll, what do you think rock and roll is a synonym for? Knitting? Rock and roll is sex, so therefore you're trained to become an icon of sexuality. I just played the guitar and wanted to get laid. It's nonsense. Sorry to lay that on you.
I'm only going to say that was what they said they wanted to do to get into it. Things changed. I mean, this was the
What, they're gay now?
No. It was the impetus when they were young. Then they realized, oh, we can write songs, and the career developed.
Yeah, that's Charles Dickens or something. That's like a Christmas carol.
They could write songs, and you've heard
Yeah, great writers. Nick Lowe, you know. I mean, Nick Lowe did the first Elvis Costello, 5 albums, you know, and
Yes.
that did, and you know, what's so funny about Peace, Love and Understanding is probably one of the greatest songs ever written, no question. But he, you know, that whole girl thing, I mean, it's just a cliche. You know, we're more individualized and I think more intelligent perhaps than that.
When we shift into acting for you?
Shifting right now.
Shifting right now. Downshift, upshift. Where are you going? First of all, I mean, are you still an actor?
I'm going to play Romeo on Broadway next week. No, acting schmacting. I'm not into acting. Because you know why? Because they put you in a trailer and you sit there for half an hour, to another half hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. We'll be ready for you, Michael, in 7 hours, 8 hours. And then you go on and they, you motherfucker, I'm going to kill you, bang. Thank you, Michael. And then within 10 hours to go shoot somebody. And I'm sick of it. I'm so tired of it. And I also think that American television is disgusting. It's awful. It's so boring. It's so stupid shows. That's why I watch Swedish shows on Netflix. You know, but don't you put the British with the subtitles? I mean, this is great. I'm so used to American acting. First and foremost, every woman over 22 has Botox. So immediately you're in a world of absolute chemical display of people that don't even exist. They live like the Kardashians. The fuck wants the Kardashians to be iconic and making $1 billion? I mean, it's pathetic. Why? Because they invented a pair of panties? I mean, it's outrageous. So acting is, I'm not interested in acting. I loathe acting. It's a horrible profession. Because what happens is, you make it, you're great, you're serious as rocket, and then they stop the series. Then what do? Then you do things like this. And I'm being honest here. You know, this is a source of money for people who are in TV shows that aren't on TV anymore. Just think about that for a second. So I got bored by sitting in the trailers waiting for something to happen, you know, because I like to move, I like it to be quick. That's why radio is so interesting, because it's right there, and it's happening in that moment. It's not like I've done something and I'm giving it to you for you to look at. It's right here, right now, and that's what I believe in, Krishnamurti, right here, right now, be here now. Acting isn't that. Be here in an hour, be here in 3 hours, fuck that.
Are there any roles you're particularly proud of?
Are there any roles?
You're particularly proud of?
I'm not proud of any of them, really. I mean, I think the answer to that is, what did I enjoy the most doing? And that would be Murdoch, because he was evil. You know, the other day he did this. I'm in a hospital, I'm going up for my checkup. I'm fantastically fit for 75 years old. I have sex 3 times a day, and I don't eat meat. And that's the type of my biography, it's very exciting. So, I'm in an elevator going up. I get in the elevator. There's this guy, this 6'4" guy, big guy, looks at me. Are you Murdoch? And I go, I'll get him. One of these days, I'm going to find him. I'm going to kill him. And then the door opened. And as I'm leaving, he goes, oh my God! You know, this big guy, you know, and he was just freaking out. I just thought that was so good, because I was Murdoch in the elevator for that guy. And that's the best performance I've ever done, ladies and gentlemen. So Murdoch was fun, that was great. I mean, and Richard Denner is such a sweetheart, you know, such a sweet man. And Henry Winkler, you know what happened? I did Live Aid, and then with the Dram Boys, and then when I finished that, I was, you know, I had an agent and an actor. Okay, so there's one role for this guy, Murdoch, and they want to see you. And I had a white Rolls Royce at the time, so I was living that life, you know, for a year or two. And I drove around the Paramount lot, and I was smoking. I had a driver, I mean, black leather, smoking. And Henry Winkler's outside the office of the MacGuyver things, and he goes, him, that's the guy, that's Murdoch right there. And I got the joke getting out of the fucking car. I didn't even have to go in there and go, some stupid script. And he knew, and he's remained my friend for years. And Henry Winkler is the greatest guy ever in show business. He's the sweetest, kindest man. And you know, I only did one episode, and then people went nuts, and I did, you know, the next 5 years of Murdoch. So not only was it fun to do, but it also had a vibe to it that was really inspiring. Trying to kill people. It's terrible.
Let's open up a bit to the floor, see if anybody has any questions out there. Any hands raised?
Come on, yes.
How did you become the DJ?
Oh, great question. Okay, so I was on the internet. I adored all of that. I thought, wow, I can really work this, you know, have fun with this. And I had a podcast way before everybody has it. You probably got a podcast there. But I was interviewing Marianne Williamson, who was running for president. This amazing woman. And Maureen Van Zandt heard me do this. And Stevie, it's his, you know, I don't know if you're aware, but he has a radio station called Little Steven's Underground Garage on Sirius XM, Channel 21. And Maureen whispered in his ear one night, you know, because Andrew Lloyd Webber, do you know who that is? Andrew Lloyd Webber was the producer, the initial producer for the Rolling Stones. He was 19 years old when he managed the Rolling Stones. Amazing man. To this day, I love him. But he was the morning DJ in New York for this program, you know, Little Steven's Underground Garage. And Maureen saw my interview with Marianne Williamson and said, well, you know, get him. And then I had a 2-week thing where I had to, you know, he tried me out, and I got the gig, and that's almost 10 years ago. So that's how.
Great. Are all those songs from your personal collection?
Oh no. That playlist is created by Stevie Van Zandt. And Bruce too. You know, because Bruce knows every fucking song, yeah. And Stevie is, for me, one of the greatest icons of rock and roll, and also very politically engaged. But what we did was, in the very beginning, and I think this would be of interest to you, is teachrock.org, which is, we go to schools and we talk to these kids about how music is made and it's an amazing thing because you've got, obviously the segregation in this country is still the same as it ever was, and I don't care what anybody says about it. And we go into these schools and we say, okay, let's play the four tops. Why the four tops? Well, you know, what does that mean? Oh, it started with gospel. Oh, what's gospel? And then you explain, you know, where this music comes from and how rock and roll was created, you know, was by gospel music, black music, you know, blues. And you get, so that's just an example of what teachrock.org is, and it's really been a phenomenal success with kids. Because music is a language, you know, and you learn from it. And that's the best way to teach people is through, you know, the arts. And Stevie came up with that, and I just fell in love with going to these schools. I go there all the fucking time to see these kids, you know, and try and make the world seem okay in many ways. Through that kind of life, 3 chords and an open heart.
I'm really enjoying listening to you, and we could listen to you all day, tell stories. Is this on?
Yo.
Sorry.
Bro, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. There was one of my, first of all, have you read the book, The Sex Revolt? It's around gender and music.
I wrote it.
You wrote it? It's a great book about gender, gender in music.
Yeah.
And really, really good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm just recommending that if you
Okay, cool.
Number 2 is one of the best phrases I've heard about addiction is that you can never get enough of something that almost works, or that feeds it. Do you know, in terms of your addiction history, what you were trying to get that you couldn't get through the addiction?
It's about security. It's about self-love. It's, you know, for a while, it's an interesting drug, cocaine, because for a while it's your Oscar Wilde, your Elvis. You know, you have this sort of egoic, iconic stature, but you need more, and more, and more, and more. And then you hate yourself, because you realize you're not Elvis, and you're not Mick Jagger, and you're not president of the world, and you're not the best fuck in the world. And all of those things, you realize you're not. And at that moment, that is the moment for sobriety to come into your life, which is what happened to me. But it happened to me because a friend of mine, who I admired greatly, and did massive amounts of Peruvian coke with him, he got sober, and I saw how he changed. And that's why the whole thing about AA is very important, because you see people who, you know, perhaps were in such pain and you knew them, and then you see them, you know, what they are now, and I thought, that's it. And it was just at the right moment in 1981 that I went, oh yeah. And you know, my life exploded then. I wrote Obsessions, #1 all over the world. I joined R.A.D. I mean, why did Robert Palmer say no? I knew Robert Palmer for years before I was asked to join the place. So all of these things, these miraculous things happened the moment that I quit drugs, and drinking. And I had a clearer consciousness, you know. Because what happens is you write on coke, and you write down this lyric, and then you say, okay, and then the next day you pick up the piece of paper and you read it, and it sucks. It's ridiculous. And yet at the time you think, yo, I'm Charles Dickens. I mean, this is Mark Twain. I mean, I'm Shakespeare. This is spectacular. I mean, you're a fucking asshole. This is ridiculous. I want to fuck you. I want to fuck you. And then I'll fuck you again, and I'll fuck you. And it's it. I mean, it's this brilliant lyric you think at the time. That's it. That's the boy. That's it. That's the hit. And then you wake up and you're all, you know. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Look, one of the
Yes, sir.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you, gentlemen.
I was just going to add one thing. One of my favorites on that is Dennis Hopper on Letterman, and Letterman asked him that he used to bring a quart of whiskey and an 8-ball of coke to the set, didn't anymore. How come? And Hopper's answer was, it stopped working. It was that simple. I mean, not that it was that simple to kick, but I just love that answer.
Yeah, he never
Kind of
stopped
what you're saying.
Dennis Hopper, you know,
He didn't
you
stop.
see, there's a, no. what's so interesting is these people that say, I didn't do it. Imagine. I mean, it's just, no, he died junkie. You know, that's the thing about addiction. You just become the best liar in the world. And who wants to be the best liar in the world? Trouble.
We have them,
I was just curious. I think a lot of us know that you were, you were the singer of Power Station for a bit, and weren't you also considered to be the lead singer of Queen at some point?
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to do it. I did want to do it. You know why? It would be, who the fuck is going to replace Freddie? Do you know what I mean? I mean, why would I put myself in that position? I mean, Adam Lambert's great, but, you know, Adam Lambert is not Queen. You know, I mean, I'm an aficionado of music, but so I feel, well, you know, it ain't Hamlet. It ain't like I'm playing Hamlet. You know, what am I going to bring to one of the greatest bands that ever existed with the greatest singer-composer? It seemed like a ridiculous challenge, you know. And also, there was something so weird about me. You know, I know that Sir Brian, he just wanted to go out and play, man, you know, and they got Adam, and he impersonates Freddie really well, and put on a tremendous amount of weight and wears, you know, dreadful clothing. And I didn't want to do that. And anyway, I was in my own world, and, you know, so now, I've been asked to join about fucking bands. But the Power Station boys, I thought, this is great. You know how that happened? How did that happen? You know, I was in, should I tell you how that happened?
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. So I'm in Texas with John Johnson, who some of you might know is my best friend, Sonny fucking Crockett. So we're in, and he's doing a movie with Ava Gardner. And I'm hanging out with him. Obsession was #1 all over the world, whatever. It was Holly Night, it was really cool. And that was really, really good. And I got a phone call from New York. And Wayne Forte had promoted there, and he said, hey, Michael, there's a band that needs a singer, and it's booked, the tour is booked, and you know, they kind of want to meet you, and would you come and meet me? I said, yeah, you get me a white limo at the fucking airport in JFK, and put me up at the Carlisle Hotel. And he said, sure. So I did just that, got in the plane, went to New York, drove to the office, go up to 14 floors. Who's in that room? John Taylor, gorgeous, stunning, and beautiful guy. He's sober now too. And John Taylor, and Tony Thompson, one of the greatest drummers that ever lived, you know. And I go, oh, fuck, and they're #1. That album was #1. And they had a tour booked 6 months. And Robert, who I'd known for years in London, as I always said that he was the British Marvin Gaye. I mean, Robert Palmer, forget about it, so talented. But he didn't want to play in front of 20,000 screaming girls. I did. I would like that. And, you know, and as a result, but he's down here. You know, he's down there. Me, I'm, oh, baby! I'm way up there. Big difference. Listen to their album. Got on the Concorde to fly to meet with Andy Taylor, who's this big. Fantastic. And I wait 8 fucking hours in this studio. The doors open, and billowing marijuana smoke comes into the thing, and Andy's right out of his head. And I've been rehearsing Get It On for the last 8 hours, you know. So I'm just waiting. So he comes in, and I go, you know, I sang a verse and a chorus, and he hits the button and said, let's go shopping. And we went shopping for clothes. I come back to New York. Okay, let's do this. So Don's in New York, and we're staying at the Carlisle Hotel, and we're going out to dinner. I get a phone call, and you're out. You're out. I said, what are you talking about? And my manager, Danny Goldberg, great guy, says, yeah, you know Robert's back. What? I just went to fucking London in the Concorde and I bought clothes. Can I keep the clothes? You know, and we go out there and we go to dinner in the Chinese restaurant, me and DJ. So he's like, he was attacked wherever we would go. He would be, you know, he was just so famous at that time. And who's in the restaurant? This is absolutely true, all of this. John Taylor. John Taylor's in the restaurant drunk. Out of his mind drunk. And DJ knew what was happening. He knew that I was in, I was out. So he goes over to John Taylor's table. And he says, who are you? And John loves it. What happened? Yeah, absolutely. And they go outside. They're 10 minutes outside. This is all absolutely true. 10 minutes outside. Come back in. DJ says nothing to me. I'm very sad. I wasn't drinking at that time. I was newly sober. Right? So I'm doing it. Go back to the car, fall asleep. Look at all those clothes. Do I have to return these clothes? I go to sleep. Phone rings. 8 a.m. Yes. You're back in. I was back in because they'd made a merchandise deal with Robert. They upped it from like 15% to 18%, you know, whatever. You know, for the merchandise, because we were making $1 million a night in merchandise. Imagine that. And it's 40, 60,000 people. And you know, and so I was back in and I had 3 days. I had 3 days to learn 30 songs, and the first gig was, what? Live Aid. The biggest concert of all time. 3 fucking days. 2 billion people. Get it on? You know, I mean, I went out there, and I swear to you, it was Dylan, Jagger, Tina, Carissa Soul, Madonna, all these people, Nervous Wrecks, which is a great band title. Nervous Wrecks. I mean, Madonna was so shaky that all of the bracelets, all you could hear was her bracelets in the side of the stage, which was unbelievable. And I could care less. And I jumped out there. I thought, you know, if there was ever a time when God is on my side, this would be it. Yeah. And I just kicked ass, you know, and I got great reviews. I got all the snarky, you know, from these dreadful, stupid fucking music writers who, you know, think they know something, you know, and therefore they feel it necessary to put you down. And I would always punch them in the fucking face if I saw them. I did. It was dreadful. I mean, people would come to the gig to review, and I'd go, come here, bam, and I'd smack them right in the fucking face. Because if maybe they said something to me. And I don't say that with pride at all. But, you know, it comes into certain things that you just want to slap people, right? Hands up, people upset people. 2 people, get out of here! What is a bunch of liars?
Michael, what didn't the music critics like about you?
They thought that I was arrogant and egoic, and they were absolutely right. I could give a shit. If you don't, who are you going to believe in if you're not going to believe in yourself? It ain't going to work, you know. Whatever you attempt, you know, you're not going to be able to do it.
You have a memoir called Who Do You Want Me to Be?
Yeah.
Okay. And it was described by, well, you said memoir is a film.
It's a documentary.
Documentary, right. The director, I was doing a little bit of research, Eric Weinstein said, he called you a benevolent narcissist. Accurate?
No.
Please explain.
I love everybody. If you don't love yourself, you will not know what love is. Narcissism is again a lazy word. It's a strange word. Narcissus would look in the river at his face and he was beautiful. What's wrong with that? Can you tell me what's wrong with that? You look in the mirror and you go, you're beautiful. That's something bad? Isn't that what narcissism is? That you love yourself? Every religion that the world has ever conceived was that. Yeah, that you love yourself. So I am a lover. I love you with your rock and roll hat. Give her a round of applause. She's beautiful. But I'm more beautiful. It's bullshit. It's just words. It's just words used by lazy writers. Nothing worse than a lazy writer, except for malaria.
You mentioned Stax, and you mentioned records, and you mentioned Motown, and I imagine and the Drifters, and they really hit you in the early '60s, I would imagine. What were the records that were formative for you? I mean, was it the stories in the songs that hit you? Because I can tell you love telling stories on the radio. You can't learn 30 songs if you don't find a story or a performance for each one of them. I mean, is that part of it in the music and rock and roll that really drew you? Throwing away the image, throwing away the bullshit?
Yeah, I mean, it began with the blues, you know, like everybody, you know, Buddy Waters, Little Walter, you know, and Robert Johnson, and Howlin' Wolf, and all of the bluesmen, you know, and women. Amazing. But that's all, you know, the blues all started in New Orleans, you know, as did everything, jazz. But I was obsessed, because at that time in London, you know, in the early 60s, everybody was Brian Jones. Everybody wanted to be Brian Jones, and Brian loved Muddy and all of that, and therefore I loved Muddy. It was so, he was the inspiration, I think, Brian Jones, for the whole fucking thing. Unfortunately, you know, he did what he did, but that music and gospel music remained with me. But what happened on the radio was I read every book I could possibly read on everyone. You know, Led Belly, everybody, and Aretha, whoever. But it was basically soul and R&B that really captured me because of the sexuality, the sensuality of music, which also had love was the main concern of those songs, you know, and it was just so beautifully put. I'm a backdoor man. That didn't mean you were fucked in the ass. That was, you want to slink into a room, you know, to that house while the husband's away, right? But everybody would reinterpret into what I said very disgustingly earlier. But I'm just trying to make a point. That it was a sensualized music with a gospelized feel. So spiritual sex, if you can imagine that. And that's how it affected me. I'm 18. What am I going to be into? Sex and music, you know. And that was that, you know, that combination of the blues, gospel, all of that spirituality and sensuality were I think, the arithmetic of rock and roll. That answers your question.
Anybody else? Other questions?
We have done about 45.
Okay, ask me
One
one
more?
more.
Okay, another question.
Yes.
No, all set. What do
No,
you mean,
no, all
What do you
set.
mean, all set?
Well, thank you so much for listening to my bullshit. God bless you. I love you.